Hello and welcome to Beyond the Point podcast with me, Ali Christensen. I'm curating the content I wish I had had as a dancer and creating strong, healthy, thriving dancers for the future. Not only am I your host and ex-professional dancer, but I own Align Fitness here in Huntington Beach, California, and I'm the creator of online courses for dancers such as lower body flexibility and turnout for dancers. If you're listening to this today, December 25th, I have to say Merry Christmas. A couple days ago, Hanukkah started. Tomorrow is Kwanzaa. We are just in the time of so many holidays. It is a fun week, and I'm really excited to be giving you guys this podcast this week while you're on holiday break. You're getting a chance to listen to a seasoned company member who has been dancing in a jazz company for many years and has had the privilege and the hard work and honor that got her there to go from a second company into the first company. So it really is a unique experience, and she has a lot of valuable information. I loved what she had to share about her dance life, about the things she's learning, personal life, things she wished she had done different as she was auditioning or figuring out whether she should stay or go, be in this company or that company. She really, really has a wonderful outlook on it, and she is sharing it all with you on this episode. So without any hesitation, I'm going to jump right into our episode today. So today on the podcast, I have Katie Rafferty joining me all the way from Chicago, and I'm so excited to have her on the podcast. Say hi, Katie.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here.
So Katie and I have known each other for quite a few years now. We met through the dance community, friends of friends, and Katie actually put me up on her couch a couple times when I went to Chicago for auditions. And she has such a fun story and has really just been a dancer that has worked her butt off to get where she is. And she's always been so positive, and her positivity and hard work has led her to, I think, an amazing spot in dance and an amazing company. So I wanted to make sure that she came on the podcast to share with you guys a little bit of her journey. So thank you so much for coming on, Katie. I'm so excited.
Thank you for those kind words. It was definitely a process. So I'm happy to share my journey, and everyone's journey is different. So
yeah, absolutely. And as we have more and more dancers on the podcast, you're going to hear more and more just how unique people's stories are. And I think that's the beauty. And in the dance world, we're finally starting to evolve to the spot where everyone does have a unique story, does have a little bit more of a unique body and journey and talents than 50 years ago, even 100 years ago, when we were looking at like every dancer looked exactly the same. We want that uniqueness now. And so it's exciting to hear everyone's stories. So Katie, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us from beginning of dance to now, what's going on in your world?
Yeah. So I had, typical start ballet when you're 3 years old. Parents just kind of threw me in to give me that activity as a young kid.
Yeah.
And I just was very serious about it from 3 years old until high school. It was always just my passion. I just wanted to be at the studio, and I just always wanted to learn and grow. We didn't have a ton of ballet training up until I think I was in 7th grade. And that's when I really started to hone in on ballet, mixed with, we're just a very well-rounded studio, which I'm very thankful for now.
Yeah.
My dance teacher growing up, she was going to college later in life. So she was going to the University of the Arts in her 30s performing, which now that I'm in my 30s, I applaud her so much for doing that and for putting herself in that position. The courage to be among 18-year-olds and dancing and going through school. But so I feel like I was very lucky that she was going through her schooling in my high school years. So I got all of her training from the University of the Arts when I was in high school. She would bring in teachers who were going through the program, and she would give us pretty much everything she was learning there. Not a very big competition studio. We would do one a year, and it was always attached to a convention. So we got, training with a little bit of, the competition side. And then I decided to go to the University of the Arts, follow in my teacher's footsteps, and Went from a big fish in a little pond to a little fish in a big pond.
Which is always a good jump. I recommend it to anyone. It's so scary, but it always pays off. Even in the long run, if it doesn't pay off the way you think it is, it always will pay off to be the little fish in a big pond.
Absolutely. Because otherwise you'll just be stuck doing exactly what you've known for your whole life.
Yeah, you'll get real bored with life.
Yes. So I'm trying to gear my students that I teach now, the same way. I was lucky that I was like a half an hour outside of Philadelphia. So going to a school in the city was like enough of a push to get me out of my comfort zone and my town. But I was also close enough that I could go back and forth home. Not everyone has that. I say just make the jump. And for me, I debated between double majoring and going to a school where I could have the full college experience like my friends were, or deciding to just go all in, just do dance and go for it. And I'm thankful I did, because it led me to where I am, and I met all of the amazing people I met in college. So
yeah. And I think that when you do fully commit to stepping into a realm like that and jumping into that bigger pond, as we're saying, if you can just embrace knowing that you're going to be uncomfortable for a while, and you're going to seek out and just put yourself out there to meet new people, you do develop a whole new set of family, a whole new set of relationships that when you're comfortable, you may not reach out to those people. That's something I think that I am better in social situations, meeting new people, when I'm really uncomfortable and I know I have to meet people. Like, you have to talk to people. I am so much more, it's so scary, and I have like the butterflies inside my stomach and my heart is pounding. But I know that as an adult now, I do much better just putting myself out there and saying you have to meet people. So if you can do that, young dancers or adults, if we are still working on that, when you get into your new dance experience, college experience, just knowing you're uncomfortable and saying that to somebody, being like, hey, Katie, I am new here. I'm so scared and uncomfortable. Can I sit at your table? It really is the best thing. And I'm sure that happened to you and led to some of the best people that you've come in contact with through that school.
And like you just said about having, the butterflies, but knowing that you do well in those situations, I feel like that goes with anything in life, and it goes with performing too.
Oh yeah.
You always have those butterflies and those maybe a little bit of anxiety, but it's always just before you do something. And then once you do it, the adrenaline and the experience that you have, you always are happy that you did. So yeah, I feel like that is important for you as well.
You perform a lot. At least it looks like you do. The company you're with, which we'll get into. What do you do? What do you do to assist yourself to calm down? Because I'm sure that there's something that causes those butterflies for you still to this day. So what do you do for yourself?
Absolutely. So I feel like I get nervous the more seasoned I get, which is so odd, but in a different way. It's like an excited, nervous, and just I want to do as well as I know I can do, and as well as I've been practicing to do. Mm-hmm. So I like to just stand in front of the downstage center spot, looking out in the audience, and just kind of close my eyes, take a few deep breaths, and then I go about my normal routine with my coworkers. We have a chant that we do together, and we do our merds, and but just being centered and balanced. And just a big part of it too is just making sure I practice in the studio what I wanted to be on stage.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you brought up a good point, and this is something that I'd actually like to explore a little bit more outside of the podcast and on the podcast. Is there's something called an arousal state, especially when we're talking about sports. And that just means that the more excited you get, the higher and more intense your arousal state gets. And if we as performing athletes, this counts for any sport, like when you get on the field or the court or on the stage, you've practiced at a certain arousal state. Then you get on the stage and you get so excited or so nervous, all of a sudden you can't do a pirouette, or all of a sudden you feel unsteady on your standing leg, even though you've done this 1,000 times in the studio. So there are people who specialize in this who figure out ways to assist you to either raise your arousal state when you're in the studio so that you're practicing at that high energy intensity, or ways to calm down your arousal state when you're like, and that's exactly what you're doing when you stand on that center stage. You're taking a few breaths. You're exactly what you said. I want to do what I'm doing in the studio. So that you have to calm yourself down to be able to do what you do in the studio. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. You're right on par with what's going on in the athletic world. And it's a really good skill and something to acknowledge, that you have to figure out how to make yourself feel like you do in the studio, whether you're more excited in the studio or you're less excited in the studio.
Right.
Yeah. Very interesting.
And nerves are good because it means you care. So.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a great thing. We just have to figure out how to hone them in when it comes to performing. So you perform a lot. Tell us about the company. What company are you dancing with? They do a lot of stuff. So tell us a little bit about what's your experience with doing that much performance?
Yeah, so I am going on my 10th season in the organization with Giordano Dance Chicago.
That's awesome.
And we are one of the founding jazz companies in America. So it's really cool to be a part of a company that is a legacy and has been passed down from Gus Giordano to his daughter, Nan Giordano, who has studied with him, trained with him, performed in the company, worked her way up, worked her butt off, wasn't handed to her, and then taking over as artistic director. So it's an honor to be a part of it.
Yeah, there's not a lot of jazz companies left in the world. I don't know if there ever were a lot of jazz companies. I feel like ballet was very prominent, and now we've morphed into that contemporary phase of life. But you guys are pretty strict jazz.
Yeah, so we do a little bit of everything, which is why I originally fell in love with the company at the audition 10 years ago. We have our classic jazz pieces that are, choreographed from Gus many years ago, but we like to broaden our horizons. We do contemporary, and we have a ballroom piece. Our fundraiser is always in the ballroom realm. And we train in ballet, modern, and jazz throughout the year as well. So we're always trying to look for new choreographers that'll bring something new to our repertoire, which again is why I love it so much, because I feel like I'm constantly being challenged and pushed and growing artistically and never bored doing the same thing.
That is very unique, I think, in a company. Even when they're bringing in new choreographers, most companies are still sticking within their niche. And so to have a company full of dancers that can switch from modern to ballroom to classic jazz to contemporary, those are some high quality dancers they've acquired to be able to do that. Yeah. What do you feel like was the biggest, or is continuing to be one of the biggest challenges with that diverse change? I'm going to assume, because if it was me, if something came in that was not what I've really spent a lot of time training in, and it's like, oh my gosh, I have to perform this. Does that happen to you? Where you're like, oh shoot, I better get really good at this. Is that still happening? Did it happen? How do you feel about it?
So ballroom was something that I was never trained in. And when I came into Giordano in the second company, I could tell it was a big part of being in the company. And so that learning our piece Sabroso, which is every kind of ballroom you can, like mixed into one dance, was overwhelming at first. We actually just recently put it back together after letting it, we call sit on the shelf of our repertoire for a few years. And it's actually now one of my favorite pieces, because it was something that took so long to get to the level it needs to be. Yeah. And once it is there, it's just so fun. It's so much fun to perform.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's with every style, getting to that spot. I think that's a big jump that you make from a pre-professional to professional, is that being able to put the hard work in, to have the commitment to get through the frustration and the corrections and the bad partnering and your failed technique, and then get to the spot where you're like, oh, this is fun. Like, then that's what comes across on the stage, because we've all had a piece that you didn't get to that spot and you got on stage and you did it, but it just kind of fell flat. It didn't have the same connection to the audience. the directors didn't like it as much. And I feel like most of the time that is the love of your movement that's coming through that falls flat if we don't get to that spot.
Yeah. And it's interesting. You said, the bad partnering, especially in ballroom, it's taught me a lot about partnering and in not the traditional way that you would approach it, but it applies to all partnering, that it really is an equal share of responsibility. And it's one of the biggest things we look at in our company auditions when I help run the Giordano auditions. Not if someone can be pressed or if a guy can be strong enough to press a girl, but how they interact with each other and how they work together. So we've seen, guys sometimes will be fabulous dancers, go to press someone and then be giving them pointers or blame the girl for not holding her, not being an equal partner and sharing responsibility. And so that's a cut right there about how you work together.
Yeah. So I know I heard my whole life growing up, and as I started to get into auditions, like they're watching from the moment you walk in the room, you're in an audition. It's not when you're just on the dance floor doing your stuff. And you're saying that's totally true. You're watching how they're interacting. You're seeing what they look like when they walk in the room. Do they talk to people? Or, what's their energy when that's happening? That's a really good remembrance for all of us that it starts from the moment you walk up to the building.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We, Nan runs the company and in like her number one thing is energy, good energy and energy with each other and creating energy in the dance world and just in the community in general. So it's equally important to be a good person as it is to be a good dancer.
I can tell that because of your guys's, you do so much outreach stuff. It seems like you guys have classes, you're part of festivals. What did you guys just do for Thanksgiving? I saw lots of costumes. So what were you part of on Thanksgiving?
So that was actually something separate that I do outside of Giordano.
Oh, okay. Which
is great. We're allowed to do separate performances when it's, our off contract time.
That's fantastic.
So I was back in Philadelphia, and this was actually my very first, I would say, professional dance job was my senior year of college. They had auditions for the professional dancers in the Thanksgiving Day parade in Philadelphia. So it's just been a tradition to go back and be back in this city and just enjoy that holiday tradition each year.
How fun. That's awesome.
Yes.
So when you guys are in season, first of all, what's in season for you? What's the timeline?
So it depends each year, mostly on our travel schedule and if we have any extra bookings. This past year, we were on July 15th through the end of October. And then we have the months of November and December off. However, off means other choreography, other teaching, just doing other gigs here and there for the company and outside of the company as well. And then we start back right after the new year in January, and we go to beginning of April. And then same thing goes April, May. We do, this is our big outreach program time. So we spend 16 weeks in inner city elementary schools, and we bring in an entire program that is free of charge for these schools, building in their science and health curriculum with dance and movement, healthy eating and nutrition, and teaching them about their bodies and how to strengthen and stretch and how to dance and just have fun. So
that's awesome. Do you feel like that breaks up your year a little bit and assists you to focus on one thing at a time because it's a little more broken up?
Absolutely. And it also helps just balance in life, finding things. It's okay to take some time off. That took me a while to get that balance and to understand that it's okay that, when you're not in your heavy dancing season, it's okay to take a little bit of a break and do other cross training things. And I think that helps with just longevity and keeps that fire burning when you are dancing.
Well, sadly but greatly, you said you're in your 30s. You are beating the dance norm. Like most dancers stop dancing by the time they're 25-ish.
Yep.
So you are talking about longevity. That's so crazy to say that in your 30s that's what it is, but you are. And so at this point, knowing that it has ebbed and flowed through your career and training, do you feel like dance is your life, or do you feel like it's part of your life? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That's a hard question.
I know, I'm putting you on the spot, and no judgment on that, but I'm just curious because I think we spend our entire life building our persona around being a dancer. And
absolutely.
I know when I got injured and had to stop dancing, it took years for me to feel like I was someone who wasn't a failed dancer. And
right.
I still see that even with professional dancers who haven't, quote, failed. By the way, I don't think you failed if you got injured, but or if you stopped dancing. But I do think I'm just interested in learning and seeing what that, especially as we get more seasoned and more experienced in our professional careers. Does dance still have that part where you can kind of separate it and it's always part of you, but it's a part of your life? Or does it always stay your entire life?
Right. I would say it's the majority of my life, but mainly because my life in Chicago is built around my career. However, when I look at that, it's not all necessarily dance per se, but it's the friendships I built through dance, and it's the other opportunities I built through dance. So I do enjoy, taking time away from it and not talking about dance and just giving yourself that break. That is a really hard question. I think that's a big part of because I am in my 30s. I'm going to be 32 the end of January, and I'm not ready to be done dancing yet. I still have that passion and love for it, but I do know it's coming soon, and so just kind of preparing myself mentally for that, because like you said, your whole life is dance, and wrapping your head around, your career being done and kind of moving on from it. I think it is healthy to always have that balance of other interests and loves in your life, so that you can make a smooth transition.
Yeah. And so much so much of it is your preparation for mindset or decision once it happens. And that doesn't mean that when you make a shift in life, change is hard, but it's inevitable. It's the only constant, right? I am working to embrace change more gracefully and just know that it's constant, and that is the only thing I can depend on. And that in the end, change has always ended up being for the better. Maybe not the next minute of change, but in the very short, long term, it has always ended up being for the better. So just leaning on that and knowing that change is inevitable and it's going to be for the best. But I do really like the way you said, my life here in Chicago has been built on dance. You moved there to dance. And that made me think that if I had stayed in San Francisco, I moved to San Francisco to dance. I went to train with the ensemble, and that's what I did. If I had stayed there, my life would be very, very, very centered around dance activities, performances, getting together with dancers, meeting in the studio. Everything would be in that niche. But because I left, because I got injured and stopped the studio work for a while, now my life has a lot of different facets to it. But I could still see being in the same spot, maybe where I'm not dancing as a professional. If I lived in San Francisco, I would be much more immersed in the dance community. And I think I would kind of fall more on your side, where it's like, what the people I'm around, the life I live, even if I'm not in the studio, it's dance. That's an interesting way to look at it, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. I think I have a couple young dancers that they're getting ready to, or have left to go train at like 16, with Houston Ballet or whatever companies they're doing. And I always recommend to them that they find friends and outlets besides dance? Because dance is super intense. It's super intense when you go to a program like that at a young age, especially when you don't quite know who yourself is. I think it's a great idea to go to your local church, whatever that is for you, or find meetups or things that take you away from dance for a night, and you get to experience other people's lives besides getting caught up in the dance studio that can inevitably turn dramatic at some point. And that's what happens.
Yes. Yeah, I think family too is helpful in that way, where they're like supportive enough where they understand, and not everyone has that, which, can be hard, but I'm lucky. My parents, my family come to Chicago and see a lot of my shows, but they also are a good outlet of, they don't know anything about dance, so talking to them and just kind of always brings that balance too.
Yeah. You have to kind of step out of your comfort zone to connect with them sometimes outside of the dance studio.
Yeah.
So how did your family support, react? Were there ups and downs as you went from college into a second company, into the company? I imagine that there was some time that someone in the family or friends or yourself was saying, is this going to happen? Should I keep going this way? What should I do with my life? And obviously it paid off. You're I think one of the rarer, I don't know if that's a word, rarer ones that got into a second company and then was able to move into the main company. That's everyone's dream, but it doesn't happen for a lot of people. So you actually lived that, but what did that look like?
Yeah. So for me, I had auditioned for Giordano, not knowing much about the concert dance world in general and nothing about the company. But I fell in love with the audition because of just the diverse rep that they gave us. I forgot about it for a little bit. Was like, okay, I made it to the end. I'm not going to put all my eggs in that basket. But in my senior year, I was very serious, set on auditioning for everything. I need a job right after. And I think for me, it was just not making the 4 years, or not even 4 years, my whole life go to waste. Like, I just had such a mindset of like, I've got to get a professional job. I've got to do this. And probably closed my mind off to some other experiences, but at the time I wanted to make it all worth it. And even really just to, this sounds bad now, but to say I made it, and I think a lot of dancers think that way too, versus enjoying the experience at the time, which I will get into.
Yeah, no, I think I think you hit it right on the head. That was a very honest comment. I think that we as dancers and as other professionals, we want to say that we made it to that top level, that you made partner in the company, that you made it to principal role, that you could dance professionally, and we know that it's because we love what we do, but we want that status symbol.
Yes. So then I got the second company position. I moved to Chicago. I didn't even know where Chicago was. Like, this is going to be great. And I got there and I fell even more in love with the rep, with the family vibe, the experience. And, back when I was a G2, things were evolving, but there were a lot of very, very supportive company members. And there were some that were a little insecure with new, fresh blood coming in. And that was more of what I thought company life was going to be like. I thought concert dance was like cutthroat and, you're in it for yourself. So for me, I had like such a mindset of like, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to get this job, and just like zoning in on that. Which after 3 years in that position, which I never thought I would spend that long in a second company position. That's like one thing I would like to go back and redo. And if I could tell any young dancers out there now, is to, and it's so hard when you're in it, but to enjoy the journey and not have your mindset on just the outcome. I am very lucky that it did end up working out, but it doesn't always. And I could have learned a lot through the 3-year experience in the second company, not looking at it as a waiting place to make it, you know? So that happened. 3 years there were some dark times in those 3 years. For me, my family was always so supportive and pushing me to stay on that track. Whereas I think for me, I was, especially in that third year, I was performing a lot with the company when I was needed, but then also being taken out when I wasn't needed. So that was emotionally and mentally very draining and very, very confusing, because I would get a taste of being in the company and then I'd be thrown back to the second company, kind of felt forgotten and cast away, and like honestly felt a little used in the time, being out and in and back and forth. And so towards the end of that year, I was mentally drained, and I at that time I didn't know what was going to happen, but I was kind of done, as far as I put in so much of like myself and my heart that I didn't even have the hope that it was going to work out and I was going to be in the company. That was a rough time.
Yeah. Well, I feel like all of us in some way have experienced or will experience that waiting period, as you said.
Yeah.
And you said, enjoy the moment, be in the moment. But can you think of anything else that during that time it was like, if I had done this differently? Because we each individually have no way of knowing what the outcome is going to be. And honestly, those directors didn't know what the outcome was going to be either. Like, even if they, I don't know them, I'll speak generally. Even if somebody says, oh, we knew you were going to be in the company from day one. You're like, yeah, but I was in the second company for 3 years, Yeah. Or I was here and there was no guidance or assurance or whatever it was, I think that happens a lot. And I can put myself in your shoes and say, I don't know if I would have lasted the 3 years. I might have, like that, like you said, that hope. But there's also, I will say, for anyone who might be in that spot, Katie, you could have had the possibility, if you had stepped out of the second company, say at the end of year 2, and gone and auditioned, you have this amazing experience with a phenomenal company that could have gotten you somewhere else, but you had your eyes set on this path ending up with the company. So each little experience that we end up with is not to be poo-pooed on or say like, oh, I wasted my time here, because I'm very confident that if you had decided, and I knew you at that time, we'd met during that period. And I remember having these conversations saying, if you leave, I think you're going to get a job somewhere else. Like you just know what you want. You want to be in this company, but there's other opportunities. And I think it's hard when we've invested so much of our heart into an organization and a company to say, I'm going to leave it. And that happens at the end too, as you're saying, like, I know in the next 10 years, I'm probably going to retire. And so leaving that organization, it can be emotional.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with being in that phase, what happened when you did get the job? Like, were you at the point where you were saying like, I was kind of done, but were you like really at the point where you were like, I'm going to walk away and then surprise, you get a contract offer? Yep.
So I actually I was still auditioning in the 3 years that I was in the second company. Not everyone does when they're in that position. I just even though I just knew down in my heart that I wanted to be with Giordano, I also did know that it might not happen. So I was auditioning, I was seeing what options were out there. But my full heart was not in those auditions. So I had got in a cruise ship offer. And I had my last interview with them, and it was a few days before my end of year contract meeting with Giordano. And at this time, I didn't know anyone was leaving. No one had announced that they were leaving. And in Giordano, we have 5 guys and 5 girls, and that's it. That's the main company. So you either have to wait for someone to leave or to be let go. So then I right before I went into my contract meeting, she was my mentor throughout the company, always such a big supporter. She sat me down and said, Katie, I am moving on. I'm retiring. I'm going to be done Dance with Giordano. And she was telling me this, hoping I would be excited that I would have a spot. Like, her leaving would be, she knew I was quote unquote next in line, which you can say that that's what you are, but you never really know until you get that job.
Yep.
And I didn't believe her. I was so like numb at that point to just thinking it was not going to work out. And I was set on, you know, changing paths. And so she had told me, and I didn't believe her. I was like, okay, well, I'm sad you're leaving, you know, but okay. And then I remember going into my meeting, and I was just so nervous. And they told me, and I just started bawling. Like, I can't believe this finally happened. And talking about this feels so long ago. I can't believe.
Yeah. I
can't believe I'm still dancing with them. But it just, I don't know, it was just a place where I feel like I always thought I wanted to do so many things. I wanted to do concert dance for a little bit. I wanted to do cruise ships, maybe some Broadway, just to like dabble in a little bit of everything that the dance world has to offer. But I found the place that I've been able to grow and be vulnerable and become, I don't know, an artist that I never thought I could become. I feel like they've given me that like opportunity to feel safe and in pushing myself in that way.
That's a phenomenal experience and company. I'd like to say that all companies are like that. I'm not sure that they are.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. I think that it's hard to create a balance in a company that of artistic freedom, yet that put together tight-knit community, and then also exactly the style that they're looking for, especially when you guys are a rep company. You are bringing in people that have a very specific stylized thing in them. And I guess every company does, but I'm thinking some of the contemporary companies, there's a lot more room for artistic expression within their box, you know, of whatever their choreographer is. But I would imagine that being able to create that ability for you to grow as an artist while still having very clean rep. That's one thing you guys have. Yeah. Very clean rep. I think that's phenomenal that the company's been able to do that and that you've taken advantage of that. That's a testament to you too. I think that so often I hear people, not just dancers, but people say, oh, well, I didn't get the chance. You know, my manager, my director, my whatever. As you were saying about the auditions, it's like it is a joint operation here. You are responsible. We're accountable. We both have a part in this. So you taking advantage of that in your company doesn't happen to all professional dancers. I feel like some walk out and say, well, I didn't get the opportunity to grow. It's like, well, you did. Yeah. You didn't take it, you know. Right. So.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't realize that you're in the middle of the opportunity. You know, like you always are looking for the solo or the next bigger opportunity, but even just, you know, a new style that you're working on is an opportunity to grow in itself, or working with a new choreographer. But I do have to say, I feel like dancing for a company too, it's like a two-way street in any relationship of, you want to be what they're looking for, but they also have to fit with who you are. And so I feel like that's when it like really works and meshes well together, is when not only are you the dancer that they're looking for to be in their company, but what their mission statement is and what their rep is also has to fit with like what you truly love to do. And that's when you'll either find the place that you can stay and grow in. If you have to try too hard to make yourself a certain kind of dancer that's not who you are, then I feel like mentally there'll be a blocking point, you know?
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely true. So as we're kind of coming towards our end of our podcast here, as a very successful professional dancer, what do you feel like your next steps are going to be after being in a company? I won't hold you to anything. If you're listening, she's going to do greater things than she probably says right now. But what we did talk about having that. You thought about going to college, doing double major. You have been aware that there's going to be a point in life where dancing in a company is not the thing you're doing anymore. So what have you thought about? How have you thought about tying that artistic side of your brain into whatever else you do? Have you given it any thought?
I have. Think about it a lot all the time. No, I think that I'm in a point right now that I've been kind of transitioning into. I've always been a teacher. I've always taught dance, but I think I'm finally finding my niche of teaching like pre-professionals and really honing in on that. I'm an authoritative jazz teacher. I've been trained in the Giordano technique, which is codified, and there's not many jazz techniques that have that set training. So I've been slowly traveling and teaching Giordano technique. I would love to continue doing that, but I also would love to teach at a college level or a higher level for professionals that want to make it in this crazy dance world.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I think. Oh, go ahead if you wanted to keep going.
No, I think I even when I was younger was debating between dancing. My double major was going to be a school teacher in education. So I think that was always what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And just finding, those dancers that want to be serious and want to get more training.
Yeah. I think it's so great you're talking about your niche in teaching and training. I know I get a lot of messages from people asking like how I got where I am today, what kind of certifications and training I've gotten. And I'm always so happy to share what I did, but like, it took me a few years, like even having been a dancer, I didn't want to train dancers when I started. Part of that was an emotional block of that, and then the more I get into the dance community on now this other side, so not being in the studio all the time, but working with dancers outside the studio, I'm meeting more professionals who are, more in my shoes. And we all can say we work with dancers, but we all work with dancers in such a different way and approach. And it's phenomenal to see like 6, 7 of us come together. Like I'm going to do this panel in February and I'm looking at the people who are going to be there, and we're all ex-professional dancers who've done A, B, and C, but we all have such different gifts in how we're delivering information, and it's all really good information. So you being able to say, well, I want to be a teacher, or it's a possibility, but I see that I fall into this niche of it and I'm good at it. You're setting yourself apart, and it's kind of like when you go into an audition, the company needs to like you, but you need to stand out. So there's 1,000 different teachers, but you knowing what you want to do with it or have an idea of where you want to go with it, I think will drive you towards success faster than just being like, oh, I'm going to teach dance, I
hope so. Yeah.
That's great. I know out here in Southern California, there was a couple studios that were started from pretty strict jazz practices, I guess. And recently a couple of the teachers passed away, which is very sad. But I've noticed that style is dying out here because we just don't have that. And I feel like on the East Coast, it's a little bit more prominent still. And it needs to filter back into the West Coast a little bit. So we'll have to get out here.
I like, so I teach at the Joffrey Academy here in Chicago, which their focus is ballet. So one of my favorite things actually is to teach ballet dancers who have beautiful technique, the best facility. I love coming in and being their jazz teacher and making them use their plie. And, and I talk to them about the importance of doing different styles, even if that's not what you want to do. But in the end, that's going to make you a better, more versatile dancer. And especially with the ballet world, these days, you've got to be able to do more contemporary rep, and doing jazz is going to help you with your musicality and getting grounded and loosening up a little bit. So I love them. I love teaching those classes.
Yeah. It's so fun. And I'm just like remembering my back in the day, very young, when I would try a new style of dance. Actually, I think African is sticking out in my mind. And it was like, I never felt like such a ballerina as when I was trying these new styles. And I just remember like thinking, well, all you can do is smile, Allie, because you look ridiculous right now. Yep. And I'm just going to keep going. And it was, even then it was like, well, the teachers are going to appreciate if I just give it my 100% ballerina self than if I get self-conscious and hide in the back. So that effort. And again, we said at the beginning, just knowing that I'm uncomfortable and I'm just going to go for it. Like people recognize that 100%. So
absolutely.
That's so great that you get to be that person for these ballerinas, because it's very important for them. So we are coming towards our end. Thank you so much, Katie, for coming on, sharing some of your perspective. If you guys are looking to get in contact with Katie, I'm sure she would be happy to answer back. Katie, what's your Instagram? How could they reach out to you?
Yes, you can reach out to me. My Instagram is at RAFF5602. RAFF 5602.
Perfect. And I'll link it. And then if you're interested in looking at the company that she works with, how can they look up your dance company?
So our Instagram is at Giordano Dance Chicago. And we also have a website at Giordano Dance Chicago. We offer workshops all around the country. We have our big workshop in June. So definitely check that out.
Yeah. It would be awesome, an awesome thing to look at and get in contact with. So, dancers and parents, this is one of those companies, like we said, that's very unique at this point in time. And being able to do a summer program or work with someone like Katie, because she is in all of the stuff. I mean, she's teaching at this point, doing all this stuff, getting the chance to learn from them. So if you're in that area or you're going to do something where you travel, I would recommend looking them up. I think it's a great experience. And if all the company members are like Katie, you're going to love it. So thank you so much for coming on, Katie. And it's been just a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a blessing to me to have friends and people in my life like Katie, who I was introduced to years ago, friends through friends. And one thing I will say for the dance community is that we all are very supportive of each other. And I hope that you continue to find friends, dancers, dance parents that do that, because I can say that my experience has been with people like Katie who have been so generous with their time, their energy, their couches. As you get older and you start auditioning, having a friend's couch to crash on when you go to a new city is priceless. And Katie has done that for me actually countless times. So I'm so grateful that she could come onto the podcast today and share so many wonderful nuggets of information and really bring to light just a different type of dance company experience. And they really are something unique that there aren't a lot of companies like that left in the world. So it's so exciting that you guys are getting a taste of it. And I recommend that you go look them up and see what's going on with Katie and her world. And I'll see you all back here next week on Beyond the Point.